the YouTube channel for the Critical Thinking Center at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. I'm Donna Warren, and I'm director of the center. And today, I would like to talk a little bit about arguments, and specifically, how we can determine what is being assumed or presupposed by an argument. But first of all, what's an argument? Well, in critical thinking, we don't consider arguments to be fights or disputes. Instead, we think about arguments as units of reasoning that are designed to establish that one claim is true by citing other claims as evidence, right? So they try to convince, they try to give good reasons to believe. So, for example, here's an argument. We should require school uniforms because school uniforms would eliminate most social competition. Now, you might never have seen an argument presented like this. This is actually an argument map, and argument maps are fantastic because they expose the structure of an argument. Now, in an argument that is this short or this small, exposing the structure is maybe less urgent because there's not much structure there to begin with. But when we get an argument that is massive and intricate and tightly woven, understanding the structure is non-trivial, really important, and very much expedited by an argument map. So let's just think a little bit about this map and the parts of an argument. The conclusion here is we should require school uniforms. That is the claim that this argument is trying to get us to believe. This claim, school uniforms would eliminate most social competition, is being given as evidence for the conclusion. So we can say here that it's the reason for the conclusion. And this line connecting the reason to the conclusion represents the inference. Inferences are, in my experience, a little bit harder to kind of grasp than conclusions or reasons, because conclusion is a claim, a reason is a claim, and inference is not a claim. It's the connection between the claims. It's basically the magnetic force or the tie between the reason and the conclusion. So it is the relationship such that if the reason were true, then the conclusion would probably be true as well. It's that evidentiary relationship or that truth-conferring relationship that we sometimes represent with words like therefore and because. So if I were to read this argument, I could say, school uniforms would eliminate most social competition, therefore we should require school uniforms. There I am representing the inference with the word therefore. I could also read the other direction using the word because. I could say, we should require school uniforms because school uniforms would eliminate most social competition. Therefore or because doesn't matter. What matters is the relationship of connection between the conclusion and the reason. All right. Now, here's the thing about arguments. They, I think, always assume things that are not explicitly stated in the argument. It's incredibly useful to figure out what an argument is assuming but not stating, because it can help us to understand the argument and it can help us to evaluate the argument. Because if an argument, whether it's ours or somebody else's, is assuming something that's not true, really helps to see that so that we can question it. Or if we're not sure if it's true, really helps to see it so we can find out. Well, where are these missing assumptions or these hidden premises or these presuppositions? There's different ways of saying the same thing. Well, basically, there's going to be some assumptions that are presupposed by the reason and some assumptions that are going to be presupposed by the inference. The way we figure out or try to identify what the missing assumptions are differs depending upon whether we're trying to find the hidden assumptions that are attached or presupposed by the reason and the hidden assumptions that are kind of attached to or presupposed by the inference. So let's start with the assumptions that are presupposed by the reason. Here's how you do it. At least here's how one way that works pretty well for me. Take a look at the reason. Ask yourself, what would show that to be false? What would be a good objection to that reason? Well, here's a good objection to the reason, it seems to me. Social competition is often grounded in things other than clothes. If that were true, right, then the reason would be false. It wouldn't be the case that school uniforms would eliminate most social competition because social competition concerns other things at least as much. The hidden assumption then that is kind of presupposed by this reason is a denial of that objection. So there it is, the denial of the objection, which is in blue down there. No, clothing is the primary source of social competition. That denies the objection that social competition is grounded in things other than clothes. And if you take a look at it, that assumption is in fact kind of buried in the reason. If I say school uniforms would eliminate most social competition, I kind of am presupposing that clothing is the primary source of social competition. So that's how you do it. In order to find a presupposition of a reason, ask yourself, what would be an objection to that? And then deny the objection, and you have yourself your presupposition. What about the presuppositions that are attached to or presupposed by the inferences? This is a different procedure. What we want to provide is the linking assumption, the thing that must be true if the conclusion follows from the reason. Another way to think about it is what links the concepts in the reason with the concepts that are in the conclusion. In order to figure this out, let's ask ourselves what needs linking. Well, here's what does not need linking. School uniforms, because that's the same concept. If someone is not sure how the claim we should require school uniforms follows from school uniforms would eliminate most social competition, here's what they're not confused about. They're not confused about how school uniforms relate to school uniforms. That's the same thing. What they might be confused about is how eliminating social competition means that we should do something. So we identify what I sometimes call, when I'm teaching, the leftover concepts, the concepts that are left over when we eliminate or fail to consider the common concepts. And there they are, right? The leftover concepts in the conclusion is we should require. The leftover concept in the reason is would eliminate most social competition. If you put those things together, you do get something like we should eliminate social competition. Now, the thing to notice here, I think, is that these hidden assumptions, or these now explicit but otherwise implicit presuppositions that I have in the blue boxes, those are in some sense explicitly there in the argument. So if you were giving me this argument, I would look at the argument and I would see, or I could see, that the claim that clothing is the primary source of social competition and the claim that we should eliminate social competition are in some sense contained in your reasoning. Whether or not you realize it, it's kind of there. These other missing premises or hidden assumptions are reasons to believe that linking premise. Now, I'm a little cautious about even calling these hidden assumptions because in a way they're not in the argument, but if it is your argument, if you're trying to figure out how you are thinking about something, once you identify your linking premise, you might ask yourself, why do I believe that? What evidence do I have for that? And then you might come up with something like, well, I think that social competition prevents people from learning how to cooperate with each other. Or, I think that social competition leads to low self-esteem. And these are the reasons that I believe we should eliminate social competition. This can be useful when you're trying to figure out just how you are thinking or trying to organize your own thoughts. Hopefully it's obvious why it's dangerous to do for an argument that is not one that you are producing, because if it's my argument, you don't know why I think we should eliminate social competition. It could be for some other reason entirely. So be really careful in supplying this kind of missing premise or this kind of hidden assumption if it's somebody else's argument. But if it's your own argument, it can be really quite illuminating. So there you've seen it. That's how we can identify hidden assumptions, missing premise, unstated presupposition, lots of different ways of saying the same thing. They all refer to the stuff that an argument is assuming without stating it. It's really helpful to kind of shed light on that so that we can understand better how other people are reasoning and how maybe even we are reasoning, and then assess that reasoning with a greater degree of accuracy and insight. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.